Góðan daginn, herslinger, and welcome to our PvP potentials for Hoenn Go Tour 2023. Obviously, the most exciting thing for everyone is Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre coming out. They are amazing, beautiful shinies, beautiful damage, crazy in raids, buffs everywhere. And right now, Master League Mega is going on, and you're just like, oh, it's a 6,000 CP Groudon. I guess I lose. And that's fun, but what we want to look at is what Pokemon we should be hunting during this Hoenn tour to get us ready for the upcoming PvP seasons. Now, everything here is educated guesswork because Niantic has decided not to release the official details, but based on previous tours as well as Hoenn Las Vegas, we've got a pretty good idea that we're going to have our rotating biomes and what spawns they're going to be in the biomes. So what we want to do is take a look primarily at Great League, because that's the broadest league, with some honorable mentions here and there for other material. Now, first of all, something very important. By the time you're watching this, you've probably already chosen Sapphire or Ruby badge, but those do seem to indicate which wild spawns you'll get of Latios or Latios. And since they are wild spawns, that means they can be low enough CP to be used in Great League, which is something anyone who hasn't been playing since we used to get weekly rewards that were legendary Pokemon are very hard to come by. So you should definitely try and get these and get any from your friends you can. Latios tends to be the preferred one, the blue boy, because he has access to Dragon Claw. So they're not super bulky. Dragon Claw lets him throw off charge moves faster, but they are Dragon Psychic type, which gives them interesting resistances, doesn't make them double weak to ice, like Altaria, our current dominant dragon, makes them resist counter, which is super helpful. With access to Dragon Breath, Latios, the red one, if they both get access to Breaking Swipe, because Niantic, I don't know, is crazy, but they both can get it in the games, it has more bulk, so if it gets a cheap move, because right now the cheapest you can run on it is Thunderbolt and Psychic, which is less than ideal, despite my best efforts to try and make it work. So if we get a cheaper charge move, Latios could become much more viable. But both of them struggle from a little bit of frailty, and Latios struggles from no cheap charge move, whereas Latios at least has that. So do consider the Ruby badge if you're only looking for Latios, or the Sapphire badge if you're looking for Latios. With those badges, you do also get increased spawns. The spawns aren't particularly anything amazing for PvP. If you choose Team Groudon, you will get increased Sunny cast form, which is something that shows up in Silph Cups. The cast forms have a lot of bulk. Sunny cast form is Ember, Weather Ball, Solar Beam. So not great, but if it ever gets another move instead of Solar Beam, it'll see even more play. And Trapinch. Flygon is really nice, a lot of flexibility. Cheap moves in either Mudshot or Dragon Tail gives it some build flexibility. No one cares about Plusle, Minun, Illumise, and Volbeat. Solrock is there as a thing. If you pick Primal Surge Kyogre, you get access to Rainy Cast Form that is super bulky with much better moves than Sunny Cast Form. It uses Water Gun, which is less than ideal but still good enough. Water, Weather Ball, and Thunder. So in many ways, it's like a Lantern with a little more bulk but less good typing. Or better typing, because it's not weak to ground, you know. And so it's a side grade, we will say. And Wailmer is there, and Lunatone as well. So not a lot from these picks. You're probably fine either way. But these are things to consider. So now let's talk about the habitats. We've got some real interesting stuff. Again, as far as we can tell, our habitats are going to rotate through twice, once every hour, 8 hours total. So you get a double dip at each of them. So let's look at what you should be looking at in each habitat, so you can then consider which habitat maybe isn't worth as much focus. We don't know if there'll be increased shiny chances. Everything has a chance to be shiny, so if you're shiny hunting, any of these options are good to go for, but we're just going to focus on PvP in the Blistering Sands habitat. The best thing for you to try and grab here for Great League is a good Blaziken from Torchic. And the great thing about Blaziken is it doesn't need Blast Burn. Blaze Kick is enough because of its high attack stat. It's got counter for fast charging moves, and then you can run Stone Edge if you want to Elite TM. to win some interesting matchups, or Brave Bird for that nuke power. Lotad, Ludicolo, is also a fascinating one. It just feels like he's one move away from being really, really strong. Grass Water is a solid defensive typing. Bubble really holds him back. Razor Leaf is also not great outside of using him against waters. He has Leaf Storm, which is super hard hitting, and Ice Beam, which is also great. So you've got lots of good options for him. It's just he doesn't charge energy fast enough with Bubble. But I'd still get a good one for Silph Cups, and if something changes with him in the future, he's really poised to do some damage in the meta. Nose Pass is also a good one to have. Probopass has a lot of good stats, a lot of good defense, some cheat moves, and you can run it with Spark or with Rock Throw for the fast move. So it sees a lot of play in various Silph Cups. It's worth having a good one, and definitely worth it. Of the rest of them, I want Ninjask to be good. Nincade is there. Ninjask is super attack weighted because it's a speedy Pokemon in the main series games. So it's very frail, and it relies on Fury Cutter, Aerial Ace, which is a terrible move, and Shadow Ball, which is a great move. But as long as its wins basically all come from landing a Shadow Ball after baiting an Aerial Ace. And once it wins, there's nothing left in the tank to continue. So it really needs some sort of move improvement in order for it to show any competitive presence, even in limited Silph Cups. But we're hoping. The rest of them, I mean, Bagons are great because Mega Salamence is helpful for raids, very powerful, very big. Aggron has a Mega Form, and I try and find places to run Aggron in Great League in limited Silph Cups. It's not great, but it's there. And Lairon, if Steel ever gets a real move, he's got Body Slam and he's got good stats, so maybe one day. Numel and Cacturn are both way too weak. Claydol is good, but it just lacks a lot of punch. Everyone wants to run it with Mud Slap so that you've got a Psychic that does ground damage in all these limited cups, and it's not getting there for me. But there's some okay options here, definitely worth a little bit of time, but this is probably one of the weaker hours, I think, the Blistering Sands. Next up is the Eerie Mists habitat. There's a lot of not great stuff here either. The good news is the most important Great League PvP Mon is in this hour, and that is Medicham. So make sure if you don't have one, for all of you new players or newer players, get a great IV Medicham. Medicham shows up on almost every team at all of the regional qualifiers. I don't know anyone who's made top 8 this year without a Medicham. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying Medicham covers so many roles and rarely has hard losses. So he's a very comfortable, confident Pokemon with a lot of bulk. So you definitely want to make sure if you don't have one, you prioritize getting a Great League Medicham. Another great Pokemon spawning here is Snorunt. Frostlass is another one of those really, really good Pokemon. Ice Ghost means that it relatively protects itself from a lot of Ice's weaknesses that show up, namely fighting. Powder Snow means it gets to its moves fast. Shadow Ball means it blows everything up. And Avalanche means that 1, it beats Noctowl, the #1 ghost killer in the big meta right now. And 2, it never really loses any matchup hard. So with an energy lead, it can flip most things, which makes Frostlass really worth your time and investment. Outside of those two, for Master League, you want to consider getting a Metagross. So Beldums are always a good thing to hunt for. They're a little too frail, as you might have seen in my last video. They don't last long, and it takes them a bit of time to get up to Meteor Mash with Bullet Punch for Great League. But still worth getting one. Masquerain is the Pokemon I'm holding out hope for. It's got access to Bubble Beam and Lunge, so it's got fascinating, interesting debuff moves, but it's still using Air Slash as a fast move. So it's glassy and it doesn't have fast energy generation, which means right now it's just too much of a risk to take. That may change though, so live spicy, get a Masquerain. Seviper, people used to like running it because Poison Fang Crunch gives it coverage and a lot of debuffs, but the Poison Fang nerf really hurt these non-Nidoqueen poison users to the point where they're not particularly good. So if you get one, great. If not, it's not the end of the world. Whismur, unless it gets Boom Burst and a better fast move, When you get Loudred, or Exploud, sorry, is not going to do much for you there. Ralts is a really good one. For Silph Cups, Gallade and Gardevoir have a lot of play in limited cups, Gallade especially, because it's got that Leaf Blade, which gives it a nice, cheap, effective move when using Confusion. Gardevoir is more of just a charm bot. But both of them are really good, really helpful. They're Megas. Mega Gardevoir is already out. Mega Gallade will come out in the future. So for Mega Master League, they're things to consider, and they're just great raid mons. So those are the big winners in this hour, but Meditite is so good, you should focus on it and Snorunt. Those two, for Great League, both of them will carry you far. Next up, we have what I like to call the winning hour, which is Verdant Earth. There's a lot of really great stuff in this hour that you should prioritize. First and foremost is other behemoth of Great League, Altaria. Swablues will be spawning. This is a great time to pick up your Altaria and save it if you don't want to use an Elite TM because you really want Moonblast on it for the mirror matchup. But Altaria is super strong, super bulky, great damage. It's a thorn in anyone's side who doesn't have a good answer to it. So that should be your top priority if you're new to PvP and you're looking to fill out your Great League roster. Alongside that, Slackoth gets us PvP MVP Vigoroth, a nice normal type with counter and body slam. So it does a lot of damage and it gets a lot of charge moves off quickly. I really like Vigoroth. He's another one of those Pokemon that with an energy lead can really push and do a lot of damage in flip matchups you wouldn't expect it to flip. Because Stab, Body Slam is just that powerful. So those are the two biggest mons. I do think Mawile is another great one to keep your eye on. You want a nice, bulky, defensive one. You can run Mawile a lot of ways depending on cups. Fairy Wind is such a good move right now that it can run, and it can run Play Rough Ironhead, which is great. Or you can run Power Up Punch in one of the Fangs. Fire Fang or Ice Fang, depending on what you're trying to cover. Makes it a really good, useful Pokemon. So I would really try and focus on Great League for getting those three. But other great Pokemon, Sceptile. He's a little glassy, but he's got a super fast Leaf Blade, and then you can run Dragon Claw, Earthquake, or Aerial Ace on it. So he's got really interesting coverage and builds. Right now, he's kind of stuck with Bullet Seed or Fury Cutter. I like Fury Cutter because it makes him win the grass matchups, the mirrors, easier. But Fury Cutter's not a great damaging move, so you want to consider that. But he's still worth getting a good one. You can try and get your Hundo Wurmple here for Dustox, which is very bulky, but probably not going to do much of anything. I'm still going to try and get one, though. Roserade is another mon that shows up a lot in Silph Cups. He's a little glassy, but Poison Jab or Bullet Seed are both viable, and then Weather Ball Fire is a great coverage move, and then you can run Leaf Storm to have a nuke as well. So you can really build Roserade in a lot of fun ways. It's worth having one. Shiftry is another Pokemon that's worth a look. It's Dark Grass with that Leaf Blade, which is the best grass move in the game, as well as Foul Play. So you can beat the Ghosts, you can beat the Waters, and you can get there very quickly because it can run Bullet Seed or Snarl. He's another little glassy Pokemon, but his damage output and the speed in which he gets the charge moves means that he's very good in skilled hands. So I think this is probably the hour with the most things worth really focusing on. For Silph Cups also, Breloom occasionally shows up. It's never main, but it's got counter. Which is usually enough for a fighting grass type. Chestnut's, I think, better now, especially because Chestnut's got access to better moves, but I love Breloom, so it's worth a consideration. Electrike, if you're still trying to get your Mega Manectric. Delcatty, I'm trying to make it work. You need to get it to XL for that bulk, and then it's got Charm, and it's got Wild Charge, so you'd think that maybe there's a role where it works, but it just... The Wild Charge without Stab isn't enough to KO. And Charm is so slow, you're not going to get to a second charge move. Regular Lanoon is another Pokemon I've used in a lot of Silph Cups. He's got Shadow Claw, Grass Knot, Thunder. So it's got good coverage. It's got a good damaging and fast charging fast move. It's a little bit squishy, but not overly so. And it works. It's not as good as Vigoroth as far as general normal types go, but he definitely has play. So there's a lot in this hour that's really worth looking at. Next up is the Ancient Shores habitat. This is another one where there's a few good pieces and then a lot of stuff not to consider. I think the biggest MVP here is, of course, Mudkip. Swampert is one of the best PvP Pokemon. It is phenomenal in Great League, in Ultra League, and in Master League, if you're limiting yourself to not have legendaries. And Mega Swampert in Mega Master League. Mudshot is super fast. Hydro Cannon, if you get the Community Day move, is phenomenal. You get to it super quickly, and then you can run Earthquake or Sludge Wave, depending on what you need. If you don't want to spend the Elite TM yet, get to. You can run it with Surf in the Great League. It's not as ideal, especially when it comes to neutral matchups, but for the matchups where it's going to win anyways, it's a very beneficial option for you. Outside of Swampert, I think Pelipper is the next best thing. Pelipper is really strong. The wing attack buff helped it almost, if not more, than it helped Noctowl, because it's got Weather Ball Water with Stab, which is just great in neutral matchups, and it's got Hurricane as a nuke. So it's a little bit more bait dependent than Noctowl with less bulk, but it's still got a lot of punching power there, which is really good. Outside of that, Wishcash from Barboach is a nice, strong, bulky Pokemon. It's got Mudshot, Mud Bomb, and Blizzard. Blizzard will nuke anything that it hits, which is great, but it takes a bit of baiting in order for it to win those matchups, like against Altaria. Additionally, Cradilly from the Lileep is a really good Silph Pokemon. Nice typing, fast-charging energy moves with that Bullet Seed, and then Grass Rock gives it coverage against both Flyers and Waters. Other than that, Melodic has great stats and okay moves. It's got Dragon Tail and Surf, and that's what you're going to use 99% of the time. You can run Hyper Beam or Blizzard, whichever one you choose is relevant to the Silph Cup, but your chances of hitting them multiple times is not high, so I don't find it weighing in as much. And then if you've missed your Wall Rain, even after it's nerfed, it's still very good, very viable. You should consider getting a Seal. Celio is also a very viable Pokemon, especially in Silph Cups. So there's a lot of good stuff going here in the Ancient Shores habitat for you to focus on. And then we get to what is perhaps the most heartbreaking part of this. The best thing, or the hardest thing for all of you longtime PvPers that you want, is a good PvP IV Relicanth. And this is the Hoenn Tour, so we can finally get Relicanth, but it is locked behind 10-kilometer eggs, with the two other regional Pokemon that we had spawn more than we needed at the last Go Fest. I love Tropius, I love Torkoal. Tropius is very good. If you don't have one, you should try and get one. It's got Leaf Blade, Aerial Ace, Air Slash, and a lot of bulk. So even though it doesn't have an ideal fast move, it's going to get to those moves multiple times. Relicanth is a very bulky Pokemon. It's got Aqua Tail, which is cheap to go with its Water Gun and Ancient Power after the buff. So it's not an open Great League All-Star. It is a limited cup powerhouse sometimes, so you should try and get one or get one from friends, but being locked behind 10-kilometer eggs with only a 33% chance, we're guessing, to hatch one is rough for the day. So here's hoping to all of you trying to get those Relicanths that the hatch rates are good for you. As far as the rest of the eggs, in the 7-kilometer, Trapinch, Phoebus, Bag, and Beldum, all of those are perfectly fine hatches. All of those, especially the Phoebus and the Trapinch, have play in Great League, but you're going to need to trade them anyways because egg IVs are less than ideal. Avoid 5k eggs, which means that I'm going to be drowning in 5k eggs. And your 2ks, you've got your 3 starters, which all evolve into very viable Great League Pokemon. Azurill, which is really good because Azumarill is a powerhouse still in Great League with so much bulk if you can get an XL one. As you might see in my last tournament video, its bulk lasted a great deal of punishment and brought us the win. Jigglypuff is a perfectly fine charmer, so Igglybuff, you're like, okay, it hatched. And you don't want the Wynot because a Hundo Wynot in Great League has to be purified because you need return. Otherwise, you have no viable charge move. So the eggs, other than the 10Ks, are nothing to write home about. And in the 10Ks, for PvP's sake, Relicanth is what you want most because the other two you probably got or can get. If you don't have a Defense Deoxys, you can consider trying to find people willing to raid for it. Defense Deoxys is an amazingly bulky, defensive, flexible Pokemon with Psycho Boost. I really like him, but I think most people raiding are going to be focused on the Primals because they're just better overall. But that is our quick and dirty rundown for Hoenn PVP Preview. Good luck hunting out there, everyone. Have a great time, and we will catch you in the next video. Thanks so much.